Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear brothers and sisters, and welcome back to the Islamic Shahada channel. When the world imagines Brazil, the mind conjures a vivid symphony of sound and color. It sees the electric fervor of the carnival in Rio, the legendary rhythm of samba, and the sun-drenched beaches of Copacabana, all watched over by the iconic Christ the Redeemer. It is a nation defined by a passionate, expressive, and overwhelmingly Catholic identity. But listen closer, past the beat of the drums and the roar of the football stadiums. Another sound emerges, weaving itself into the complex fabric of the nation. It is the adhan, the Islamic call to prayer. A sound that is not new to this land, but is rising from the quiet margins. A call to prayer echoing through a history once silenced. Brazil is home to one of the most dynamic and fastest-growing Muslim communities in the Americas, with a population now estimated to exceed 1.5 million. This is not a story of introduction, but of renaissance. It is the rebirth of a faith that first arrived on these shores in chains, carried in the hearts of enslaved West Africans. A faith that was brutally suppressed, nearly erased by force, and later quietly nurtured by Arab immigrants. Today, it is a faith that is finding its own unique Brazilian voice. We will trace the arc of this rebirth. Our journey will take us to the historic cobblestone streets of Salvador in Bahia, the site of a forgotten rebellion that nearly changed the course of Brazilian history. We will navigate the vibrant, modern-day heart of Islamic life in the metropolis of São Paulo, a hub of commerce, conversion, and culture. And we will travel to the unique tri-border city of Foz do Iguaçu, home to one of the largest and most established Muslim communities in the hemisphere. We will explore how a global faith adapts, thrives, and fuses with a culture known for its own powerful identity. Our story begins not with immigrants, but with rebellion. To understand the roots of Islam in Brazil, we must travel back to the year 1835 to the city of Salvador in the state of Bahia. At the time, Salvador was the heart of Brazil's sugar economy, a bustling port city built on the brutal foundation of African slavery. Nearly half of all enslaved Africans brought to the Americas landed on Brazilian shores, and in Bahia, a significant portion of them were Muslim. They were known to the Brazilians by the Yoruba term Malay, meaning simply Muslim. These were not merely laborers. The Malay were a diverse group, hailing from sophisticated West African societies like the Oyo, Hausa, and Nupe kingdoms. Many were urbanites, merchants, artisans, and clerics who had been captured in regional conflicts and sold into the transatlantic slave trade. Crucially, a great number of them were literate, fluent in Arabic, the language of their faith and their scholarship. In the oppressive darkness of the slave quarters, they secretly organized schools, taught their children the Quran, and maintained a vibrant intellectual and spiritual lineage that connected them back to Africa. Their literacy became their instrument of resistance, allowing them to communicate, organize, and plan in a language their masters could not comprehend. They wore protective amulets, small leather pouches containing folded papers inscribed with Quranic verses and prayers, a physical manifestation of their defiant faith in a land determined to erase it. On the night of January 24th, during the final days of Ramadan, these enslaved Muslims launched their audacious plan. For months, leaders like Pacifico Licutan and Ahuna had meticulously coordinated a revolt timed to coincide with a local Catholic festival, hoping the authorities would be distracted. Their goal was audacious: to liberate all enslaved people in Bahia, seize control of the city, and potentially establish a free Islamic territory. Dressed in the white garments symbolic of their faith, they poured into the streets of Salvador, their numbers swelling to over 600. For hours, they fought pitched battles against the Brazilian military and armed civilians, transforming the colonial city into a war zone. Though they fought with immense courage, the rebellion was ultimately crushed. Betrayed by an informant hours before the uprising began, The Malay faced a prepared and overwhelmingly superior force. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Hundreds were killed in the fighting, and the subsequent trials saw its leaders publicly executed, flogged, or imprisoned. Yet, the significance of this event cannot be overstated. It was the largest and most organized urban slave revolt in the history of the Americas. It sent a shockwave of terror through Brazil's slave-owning class, revealing the powerful intellectual and organizational capacity of the very people they sought to dehumanize. The failure of the revolt triggered a new chapter, a brutal and systematic campaign of erasure. Terrified of another uprising, the Brazilian authorities sought to extinguish the source of the rebellion's power, Islam itself. A period of intense religious persecution began. The use of Islamic clothing was forbidden. Security forces raided homes, confiscating and publicly burning any Arabic texts, religious manuscripts, and Qur'ans they could find. Forced conversions to Catholicism were rampant, and any outward expression of Islamic identity was met with severe punishment. The government also implemented a policy of targeted deportation, repatriating freed Africans to West Africa, specifically targeting the literate Muslim leaders they viewed as a permanent threat. The legacy of the Malay, their intellectual heritage, and their courageous fight for freedom was intentionally buried, almost completely erased from Brazil's national memory for over a century. Islam was driven deep underground, surviving only in syncretic practices and whispered memories. The failure of the revolt triggered a new chapter, a brutal and systematic campaign of erasure. Terrified of another uprising, the Brazilian authorities sought to extinguish the source of the rebellion's power, Islam itself. A period of intense religious persecution began. The use of Islamic clothing was forbidden. Security forces raided homes, confiscating and publicly burning any Arabic texts, religious manuscripts, and Qur'ans they could find. Forced conversions to Catholicism were rampant, and any outward expression of Islamic identity was met with severe punishment. The government also implemented a policy of targeted deportation, repatriating freed Africans to West Africa, specifically targeting the literate Muslim leaders they viewed as a permanent threat. The legacy of the Malay, their intellectual heritage, and their courageous fight for freedom was intentionally buried, almost completely erased from Brazil's national memory for over a century. Islam was driven deep underground, surviving only in syncretic practices and whispered memories. But a faith can never be truly erased. Decades passed. Brazil abolished slavery in 1888, the empire fell, and the 20th century dawned on a new republic seeking to modernize and populate its vast territory. It was in this new era that a second, entirely different wave of Muslims began to arrive. These were not enslaved Africans, but voluntary migrants, primarily Arabic-speaking Christians and Muslims fleeing the economic and political turmoil of the collapsing Ottoman Empire. Most came from the regions of Greater Syria and Lebanon, seeking economic opportunity in a new world. Unaware of the deep-rooted African Islamic history that lay buried beneath their feet, these Arab immigrants began to lay the institutional foundations for the future of Islam in Brazil. They were merchants, peddlers, and entrepreneurs who, over generations, established themselves and built communities. As they prospered, they organized. They founded charitable societies, social clubs, and eventually places of worship. In the 1950s, this culminated in the construction of the Mesquita Brasil in São Paulo, the country's first major mosque, a landmark that would become the institutional heart of this new, immigrant-led Muslim community. They were planting seeds in a soil that had been tilled long before them, creating the visible structures that would, one day, provide a foundation for the unexpected Renaissance to come. Today, the Islamic Renaissance thrives in several key hubs, each with its own unique character, forming a triangle of faith and identity across the vastness of Brazil. To understand this modern revival, one must first travel to its undeniable epicenter, the sprawling concrete metropolis of São Paulo. This city, home to the largest concentration of Muslims in the country, is the engine of the community's economic and intellectual life. Here, in the bustling commercial district of Braz, the legacy of the early Arab immigrants is alive and well. The streets are a vibrant tapestry of textile shops, electronic stores, and trading companies, many of which are owned and operated by the descendants of the original Lebanese and Syrian families who settled here a century ago. Anchoring this entire ecosystem is the historic Mesquita Brazil, whose minarets rise as a testament to the community's endurance and prosperity. But today's community is far from monolithic. The mosque's congregation reflects a new, globalized Islam. Alongside third-generation Arab Brazilians are recent immigrants from Pakistan, Senegal, and across the Muslim world, all drawn to São Paulo's economic promise. From the economic heartland, our journey takes us southwest, to the city of Foz do Iguaçu. Nestled at the confluence of Brazil, Paraguay, and Argentina, this is the community's traditional stronghold. If São Paulo represents Islam's diverse present, Foz do Iguaçu is the guardian of its deeply rooted Arab heritage. The skyline is dominated by the magnificent Omar ibn al-Khattab Mosque, one of the largest and most beautiful in Latin America. Here, the Muslim community is overwhelmingly of Lebanese descent, and the bonds of kinship and tradition are palpable. Arabic is spoken fluently not just in the mosque, but in homes and businesses, a linguistic anchor for a community determined to preserve its heritage across generations. This is a settled, confident community that has built a complete social infrastructure: Islamic schools, cultural centers, and charitable organizations that provide a framework for life from cradle to grave. They have successfully carved out a space where their religious and cultural identity is not just preserved, but celebrated as an integral part of the city's multicultural fabric. But perhaps the most dynamic and telling chapter of this renaissance is not found in the established communities, but in the individual hearts of Brazilians themselves. A powerful and accelerating wave of conversions is reshaping the face of Islam in the nation. From the vibrant shores of Rio de Janeiro to the historic cities of the Northeast like Recife, thousands of native-born Brazilians with no prior ethnic or family connection to the faith are embracing Islam. This phenomenon is driven by a confluence of modern factors. For many, it is a spiritual quest in a society undergoing rapid social change, a search for structure, meaning, and a direct, unmediated relationship with God. The internet and social media have become the primary gateways, offering unrestricted access to Islamic knowledge and global Muslim communities, bypassing the need for a local mosque or physical teacher. This digital dawah allows seekers to learn at their own pace, to find answers to profound questions away from the prying eyes of a sometimes uncomprehending society. However, the path of a convert is rarely without challenge. They often face deep-seated cultural friction, from families who view their conversion as a rejection of their Brazilian heritage, to the simple daily struggle of navigating a new identity in a society whose rhythms are set by Catholic holidays and a carnival culture. This renaissance is not happening in a vacuum. It is a dynamic process of cultural negotiation and fusion. The question for Brazilian Muslims is not how to live separately, but how to be fully Brazilian and fully Muslim. This beautiful synthesis is most vividly expressed through food. At events like the annual São Paulo Halal Food Festival, which saw record attendance in October of 2025, the creativity is astounding. The star of the show is often the feijoada halal. Feijoada, a rich stew of black beans and pork, is Brazil's undisputed national dish. To make it halal, Muslim chefs have ingeniously replaced the pork with smoked beef and other permissible meats, transforming the dish while preserving its soulful essence. This single culinary creation is a powerful metaphor for the entire community. It is an act of faithful adaptation, proving that one does not need to abandon Brazilian culture to adhere to Islamic principles. This spirit of creative adaptation extends to fashion and identity. For Muslim women, the hijab is a clear and public statement of faith. But in Brazil, it is being reimagined. Rejecting the notion that modesty must be somber, a new generation of designers and influencers are creating a distinctly Brazilian style of modest fashion. They blend the principles of hijab with the country's vibrant aesthetic, using lightweight, breathable fabrics suitable for a tropical climate, and incorporating the bold colors and patterns for which Brazil is famous. It is a visual declaration that a woman can be devout, fashionable, and unapologetically Brazilian, challenging both internal and external stereotypes about how a Muslim woman should look. This fusion finds another, perhaps more surprising expression in the world of sports. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, a martial art that has become a global cultural export, has found a significant following among young Muslims. Practitioners speak of a profound synergy between the discipline of the sport and the principles of their faith. The intense focus, the humility required to learn, the control over one's ego and aggression, these tenets of jiu-jitsu align perfectly with Islamic concepts of self-discipline, patience, and the greater spiritual struggle against the self, the jihad al-nafs. For many, the dojo becomes a space not just for physical training, but for spiritual refinement, a place to build character in a way that is both deeply Brazilian and deeply Islamic. In the contemporary era, this renaissance is being accelerated and defined online, and is increasingly engaging with Brazil's most pressing national conversations. A new generation of digital activists and influencers has emerged, using platforms like Instagram and TikTok to build a vibrant digital ummah. They create content in Portuguese that serves a dual purpose. For non-Muslims, they provide a relatable, humanizing window into Islam, demystifying practices and challenging stereotypes with humor and authenticity. For the growing number of converts who may feel isolated, they offer a vital sense of community, a virtual space for support, education, and shared identity. This modern community is also looking outward, applying the principles of their faith to urgent global issues. As the world's attention turns to Belém for the pivotal COP30 climate summit, a growing movement within Brazilian Islam is championing the concept of green Islam. These activists are connecting the Quranic principle of Khalifa, humanity's role as stewards and guardians of the earth, to the critical fight to protect the Amazon rainforest. They argue that environmentalism is not just a political or scientific issue, but a profound religious duty, framing the ecological crisis in moral and spiritual terms that resonate deeply within their community and beyond. Yet this thriving future is not without its shadows. The growth of Islam has coincided with a rise in religious intolerance, fueled by global political narratives and amplified by local media. A recent survey released in mid-2025 highlighted a worrying increase in reported incidents of Islamophobia, from online harassment to public discrimination against women wearing the hijab. However, the community's response is not one of retreat, but of engagement. Leaders are actively participating in interfaith dialogue, building alliances with Catholic, evangelical, and Afro-Brazilian religious communities to foster mutual understanding and present a united front against all forms of religious bigotry. They are making the case that a stronger Islam does not threaten Brazil's identity, but rather enriches it, adding yet another vibrant thread to its magnificent multicultural tapestry. The future of this Islamic Renaissance is not found in historical texts or demographic charts, but in the vibrant, confident voices of its children. In Islamic schools and community centers, like those in the suburbs of São Bernardo do Campo, a new generation is coming of age. For them, Islam is not a rediscovered past or a newfound identity. It is simply their reality, woven into the fabric of their Brazilian lives from birth. They are the first generation to be born into this modern, visible, and increasingly integrated community, and their perspective is fundamentally different from that of their parents and grandparents. They are digital natives who learn about their faith as much from global online scholars as from their local imam. They speak Portuguese as their first language, peppered with the same slang and inflections as any of their peers. Their world is one of synthesis, where potential contradictions are resolved with a natural ease. They see no conflict between wearing the yellow jersey of the national football team during the World Cup and laying down a prayer rug for Salat. The discipline of fasting during Ramadan coexists with the joy of sharing a bowl of acai with friends. For them, identity is not a choice between two worlds, but the confident embrace of one, unified whole. As one young student eloquently puts it, "I am 100% Brazilian, and I am 100% Muslim. One is my country, my culture, my heart. The other is my faith, my guide, my soul. They are both who I am." This generation is not merely inheriting a faith, they are actively shaping its Brazilian future. They are less burdened by the immigrant experience of cultural preservation and more focused on civic contribution. They see their faith not as an ideology to be insulated, but as a moral compass that compels them to engage with Brazil's complex social issues, from inequality and social justice to environmental protection. They are creating a brand of Islam that is intellectually curious, culturally fluent, and socially conscious. They are the ones who will lead the interfaith dialogues, innovate in the halal economy, and represent their community in the arts, sciences, and politics of Brazil. They are the ultimate inheritors of the Malays' legacy of resilience and the Arab immigrants' legacy of perseverance, and their vision is one of full and confident participation in the life of their nation. The story of Islam in Brazil is ultimately a testament to resilience. It is a journey that stretches across centuries, from the whispered prayers of the enslaved Malay in the dark confines of a sugar plantation to the confident public voices of a new generation shaping the national conversation. It is the story of a faith that was brutally suppressed, driven to the edge of extinction, and then patiently rebuilt, seed by seed, by immigrants seeking a new life. What we are witnessing today is more than just numerical growth. It is a renaissance of identity. This is the story of a community forging a unique path, refusing to be defined by external narratives. It is an identity that honors a distant heritage while celebrating a present reality, one that finds harmony between the sacred texts of the Quran and the vibrant rhythms of Brazilian life. From the hidden Arabic script in the amulets of 19th century rebels to the viral TikTok videos of 21st century Muslim influencers, the thread of faith has remained unbroken, adapting and transforming with each generation. This is a community not just living in Brazil, but becoming an inseparable part of its future tapestry, adding its own unique color and texture to the magnificent, ever-evolving identity of the nation. Brazil is home to an estimated 1.5 million Muslims, and the number continues to grow. Thanks for watching until the end. I hope it was useful. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.